Every warship has its own story to tell. However, it's only natural to be more curious when you come across an abandoned submarine. You wouldn't believe the stories about these vehicles that we are about to tell you. Creating these cars is practically a miracle in itself, but wait until you hear what these things have been through. Some of them were found along the shores, while others were discovered in dark and strange tunnels. Submarine Island is part of an island chain created by volcanic activity and is about 250 miles off the coast of Japan. If you take a look at it, no one would ever think that this deserted island is full of rusty ruins that make it look a lot like a villain's lair. It wasn't always this way, as the Soviet Union used its northern side as a secret base for their submarines after blasting a channel through it. Protona Bay in the late 1970s, Submarine Explorer suffered an even more tragic story than the others on the list. It was completed by a German inventor named Julius H. Kroll and an American inventor named Ariel Patterson. It was one of the first underwater craft and the first submersible that could descend below 100 feet for hours at a time. The Explorer could fit 6 crew members. It was actually developed for the Pacific Pearl Company in Brooklyn and not for military use. The German submarine, U-352, is also known as a Type W2 Submarine. Began his military career in 1942 under the Wolfpack as part of the Kriegsmarine in the Battle of the Atlantic. He later arrived in North Carolina, where he attempted to shoot down the SS Frieden to no avail. He ran out of luck on April 7, 1942, when he fired on a U.S. Coast Guard cutter, mistaking it for a merchant ship. There is an abandoned military cemetery just outside Plymouth. The site is called Guz, and it's a show. It is full of state-of-the-art naval craft that formed a fleet of nuclear submarines during the Cold War. HMNB Devonport is now home to a dozen submarines, including HMS Courageous, HMS Victorious, HMS Vanguard, HMS Tireless, and Conqueror. Nuclear engines are still intact to this day. For 4 decades, this site was a bustling military center for the Soviet Union. Since then, the Haras submarine base has been abandoned and vandalized. You will find rusted metal structures and an old lighthouse that have been victimized by outside forces and darker times. It was built by the Russian military in the 1960s and served as a base of operations for the Soviet occupation of Estonia, which lasted until 1991. The USS Ling was a high-speed submarine that was commissioned in 1945 under the orders of George Garvey Malumphey. It was created to fight German U-boats World War II, although it never fought in any battles. In 1946, it was taken from Naval Submarine Base, New London, to the Panama Canal Zone. The following year, it was decommissioned and then given to the Atlantic Reserve Fleet. The USS Ling was repurposed as a training ship and brought to the Brooklyn Navy Yard in New York, where it was then recategorized as an auxiliary submarine. What do the wreck of the Coney Island Questor submarine and the SS Andrea Doria have in common? The Italian liner, dubbed the Titanic of the 1950 SE, went down on the Massachusetts coast after colliding with the EMS Stockholm. It sank with 46 people and treasure estimated to be worth millions of dollars. After Brooklyn's shipyard, worker Jerry Bianco heard about it. He built a 45-foot submarine using metal salvaged from the Coney Island wrecks to retrieve the sunken treasure. What used to be Yugoslavia is the site of abandoned and strange submarine tunnels built along the Adriatic Sea. The tunnels in present-day Croatia were a strategic military location for the people fighting for the independence of the island of Vis during the German occupation in World War. The tunnels were the first modern military tunnels built in the Viz Hills. The Battle of May Island became known as one of the worst military disasters in history. It was so embarrassing that they didn't let the public know until everyone involved was dead. You may have heard of this before, but did you know that no enemy ships were involved? All that was there was a battlecruiser ship as well as 3 submarines. On January 13, 1918, these K-class submarines of the British Royal Navy collided in the middle of the night after suddenly changing course while heading for Scapa-Flow, Scotland. At low tide, you'll be able to see the 2 Royal Naval XT-class midget submarines dating back World War II. To be exact, you will see their corroded and destroyed skeletons on the east coast of Aberlady Bay, Scotland. They were part of the T training ships produced by Vickers Armstrong Lt. in the early 1940s. Sazan is a small island off the Albanian coast and was once the home of Soviet Whiskey-class submarines. It has since been abandoned, from the aging vessels to the networks of tunnels that run beneath it. The Soviets operated their biological and chemical weapons factories there, although Albania seized the base after leaving the Warsaw Pact in 1968. It increased their navy by a significant amount, of course. This massive attack submarine was a Soviet Navy vessel during the Cold War. It was used to train Cuban, Indian, and Libyan submarines. Commissioned in 1967, the ship was classified as a Soviet Project 641 class submarine, although it was known as the Foxtrot to Western forces. Who would have thought that a Navy attack submarine could be repurposed into a ship or party ship? In any case, this was the fate of the Soviet submarine Zulu V Class B-80, which was a ship under Soviet Project 611. This meant that it was part of a series of post-war attack ships. The submarine was renamed Foxtrot and moved to the maritime quarter in Amsterdam North. The Ukrainian town of Balaklava is so picturesque that you would probably never guess that there are cold, strange, and long tunnels inside the mountain. This was part of the Soviet project to create a secret submarine base with a dry dock and water channel. It was called the Object 825 GTS and was built in the 1950s so that submarines could appear undetected. The tunnel network came with a nuclear shelter that would protect the nearby city in the event of a nuclear attack. The Soviet Naval Museum complex in Balaklava also came with a massive technical and repair base code named Object 280. This complex was made to maintain and store the nuclear arsenal that was being transported to the tunnels of Mount Tavros at the time. Object 280 was basically a special tunnel they used to load equipment in during the war. This made perfect sense, as the Object 825 GTES was basically created to store, maintain, and repair the ships of Project 613 and 633. Have you ever heard of a narco submarine or drug submarine? If you haven't, you should know that the Bigfoot submarine is a type of unmanned submersible craft created by drug traffickers to smuggle drugs and other contraband from a remote location. This was a narco submarine seized in Ecuador. In July 2010, Colombian drug cartel members were found to be using the submarine to bring cocaine from Colombia to the United States via Mexico. The 5th submarine of the Indian Navy was none other than INS Kursura. In its 31 years in the Indian Navy, the submersible has traveled around the globe and covered a distance even greater than the diameter of the Earth. The submarine was in service during the 1971 Indo-Pakistani War, participated in naval exercises with various countries, and acted as a messenger of peace. In 2001, it was decommissioned and converted into a public museum in Visakhapatnam, or Vizag. This is another British submarine base and fort that the Royal Commission has used in the past. Horse Sand Fort is a sea fort located in the Solent Strait in Portsmouth, England. Originally intended to be part of the Palmerston Forts, it was used by the British during the Second World War, as it was heavily equipped with sophisticated weapons and submarine defenses, binding bonds through beautiful tales. Thank you for watching.